Hello, Delegate Wranglers. Welcome to another DW live show. This is series 4, episode 7. We've got one left of this series, and this is a really fantastic show. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Dominic. Hello, Dom. How are you? What did you have for lunch?
I haven't actually eaten yet today. Good afternoon, but thanks for asking.
Standard question, Dom eats lunch.
Ed was actually out on the lunch run as I walked down into the studio, so I will grab food later on. I'll update you if you like. I'll message you.
So, please do. So, guys, we've got a fantastic show today. In about 5 minutes, we're going to be talking to Ashanti Bentil-Dhue of Diversity Ally. We've been trying to get Ashanti on for a while, so we're really delighted to have her on with us today. Really looking forward to it. It's going to be a good show, Dom.
I'm looking forward to this one. We actually produced an event called Inclusion and Diversity in Nuclear. So it's a very targeted audience, but it's hugely popular and it's gained traction. I think we've worked on it. I think we just did the 3rd year, and it's grown every year that we've run it. So it's a subject that's not. It's a catch-all subject in specific industries, but it's just such a wide topic to be covering, and I'm really glad we're finally getting to do it in this show as well.
Yes, it's going to be really good. So before we get there, we're just going to tell you where you can watch this show, or where you might be watching this show.
I'm going to make you do this one week.
Right, we are live on YouTube, we're live on Facebook, we're live on LinkedIn Live.
We are.
Bring it on.
But as ever, you can catch up with all of the Delegate Wrangler stuff by following their social media channels, which are Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Like, follow, share, connect, subscribe to all of the channels. It does nothing but spread all of the love that the Delegate Wranglers does in the event community, and it absolutely helps out making sure that you spread the word of the work that we've done with this show too. And there is, for those of you that have only seen 1 or 2, we've done 60 plus of these shows now, and they are all about an hour. So there's more than 60 hours of content out there, all primarily, masterclass and the like. So it's just there to upskill and educate, and it's thoroughly worth going back and looking at some of those if you just want to brush up on some stuff. Just go on YouTube and you'll find all the videos there.
And we're really grateful to yourself, Dom, and the stream team for producing these shows every week. They make the magic happen.
You are welcome.
Really well. And also Event Case, who are our registration partners for these shows as well, who do a fantastic job every week. So there's a couple of things, Dom, I wanted to cover. The first one was we were at the meeting show a couple of weeks ago.
I loved the meeting show.
Wow, it doesn't seem like 2 weeks ago, does it?
No, it really doesn't. It was a really good show. Anyway, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, so what we did at that show was we coerced, bullied, and ensured that a few people came and spoke to us about the Show Up campaign that the Delegate Wranglers have been running, #ShowUp. So we made a little video, and we hope you guys like this, and we'll be making it available so you can share it on social media and stuff. So without any further ado, we'll show you our Show Up campaign when we asked people why they showed up at the meeting show.
It's so important for people to show up because people are the lifeblood of this industry. It's so good to have a buzz back at live events.
We are here today because we think it's really important to make it happen, which is our slogan. Live events need to come back. Everyone is sick of looking at hybrid screens, and we want to see audiences back and enjoying live events.
We are exhibiting on the Delegate Wrangler stand as one of their partners and to reconnect with the industry.
So I am here today as I am one of the Tomorrow's Talent winners from this year, and I thought it was such a good opportunity for me to come and meet everybody in the industry that I've met over the past 12 months.
It's amazing to be supporting the industry, giving all of my clients and suppliers a big hug again. We've all been through such a difficult time. It's so good to be back.
So great to be back in live events, the industry reconnecting, people being back together, reconnecting, doing live events, meeting people, and just being back in what we do best.
It's so important to support the events industry, and it's amazing to see so many other people doing the same thing here today. Why would we not be here?
I've showed up to support the industry and to be here to meet all my industry colleagues. I've attended the meeting show to meet up with industry colleagues, network, and find out how our industry is recovering.
I'm basically here to get the industry going again and to show the industry that we are comfortable getting out of our comfort zone and getting out in public to bring confidence in people to start traveling overseas again.
We're here for me mainly to re-engage with partners, suppliers and clients that I have possibly haven't spoken to over the last 2 years. For me it's important really to be here. It's not just about the business, the work, but it's the relationships. And a lot of this industry sort of goes round, it's motivates from meeting people, meeting clients. I've shown up today because to show my support for all the other event people that are here today, whether they're venues, whether they're event staffing or whatever. So I'm here to not only make good contacts again as we come out of the pandemic, but also to support people really.
I've shown up because the events industry is definitely back with a bang. I've attended lots of events for the industry so far, and this is the busiest yet.
I'm here today because I love this industry and I'm meeting a lot of gorgeous, very positive people, because we are determined that this industry will win through. I'll see you soon.
So we are all showing up today because this is massively important for the events industry to get back on its feet. If we don't do this and get the wheels of everything moving, who can? So this means showing up for not only trade shows, but for fam trips, any launches or anything you've been invited to, online, in person. Show up, guys, it's so important. Well, I hope you enjoyed that, guys. It was a really good thing for us to do. We had we had a lot of fun, and it was really nice, wasn't it, Dom? And quite sometimes.
Everyone was a great sport for actually getting involved in that, because we didn't pre-warn anyone. We were literally just grabbing people as they walked past. Nikki Bewes, particularly to you, because you really didn't want to do it, and I'm sorry you made the final edit, but we had to drop it in. The point about that video, though, is I know, and obviously to Chris, I'll see you soon.
Yeah.
But the point about the video is just to highlight the importance of showing up, and that's to anything that's organised right now, whether it's a fam trip, as Neil said in his closing summary there, whether it's a fam trip, whether it's to a show like that, whether it's to an awards ceremony. Everyone is working so hard to get the events industry back on its feet at the moment, and it's massively important to every single one of us, whether you're a buyer, you're a supplier, a venue, and whatever you do in this industry, just go support those guys that are actually working so hard to bring the world back to life for us all.
You forgot to mention the DW Live show there, Dom, as well.
Sorry. Everybody in the community.
You're contractually obliged to do that as well. Yeah. Anyway, so no, big thanks to everybody who joined in. We've got another one just as long as well, so we will be showing that. And as I say, we will put it on the group and out there on social media. So please share it, guys, and let's get the message across to everybody. Yeah. Everybody in this industry needs to play a part. Yeah. So just on that mind, Dom, we have got an event coming up on Thursday, haven't we? Callum's going to show the slide for us.
We do.
So
indeed.
Me and Dom. Yeah, we're speaking at an event called The Future Shape of Events.
Well, I'm speaking. You're asking the questions.
I'm asking the questions. Don't worry, guys. I'm going to throw him under a bus with some really awkward Brexit type questions. Have you been vaccinated? Things like that. No, we've got a fantastic panel. We've got Sasha, Frank from Cooni Congress, myself and Dominic, and we're going to be talking about all things a future shape of events. So, hybrid events, online events, in-person events, how they can be integrated, lots and lots of things, whether the technology is shaping the events or the events are shaping the technology. I put that in, Dom, because that was my really good question that I came up with. And So, guys, I'm going to put that in the chat room, the link to register. What we need, guys, is for as many of you to come as possible. It's actually a hybrid event, so we've got spaces for around 30 or 40 to come to the Novotel London West near Hammersmith, or you can watch online. But we'd really love you to come, and to entice you into this, we're going to have a little meet-up afterwards with a bit of light lunch and a few drinks and a few networking. You can actually speak to Dom in person. You lucky people. You lucky people. Anyway, so really hope you can join us. I'm going to put the link in. Look at him shaking his head. We're going to put the link in the chat in a second on all the channels. Hope you can join us. Anyway, on with the show. I am pleased to be joined by Ashanti from Diversity Ally. How are you, Ashanti?
Good afternoon. How are you?
Hi, Ashanti.
Yeah, we're all good. We're all good. Thank you. As I say, really looking forward to this show. It's been long overdue. Do you want to tell us a bit about your, how you got into the event industry, how you got into the diversity side, just a little potted history. So for anyone who doesn't know you.
Sure. So essentially, I started out by arranging events, diversity events for my corporate employers. So I came up in the financial industry, so worked for big banks, and noticed that they didn't really arrange any kind of events or initiatives really back then. This is 10 odd years ago now, around diversity. And so I started by arranging events in-house, and then I went freelance after leaving those corporate roles and started my own events company. But of course, along the way, I noticed that there was a lack of diversity and that quite often I'd be the only person of colour in the room. And that made for some interesting and amusing experiences. So about 18 months ago, I met my co-founder, Gabby Austin Brown, and we formed Diversity Ally, which is really the first diversity and inclusion consultancy specifically designed to support the events and hospitality industry. So we have since created some global benchmarks for the events industry, and we are also hosting the Diversity in Events Awards in April 2022.
Wow, so I know some amazing stuff there, and you can see the journey you've taken to come to where you are, and I know a lot of people will already know you and know the great work you did. And you were at Confex. We were just chatting before the show. Yeah. You had an amazing stand at Confex, and you had a really good experience there, didn't you, as well?
Absolutely, it was brilliant. We are the first diversity kind of business to be exhibiting at Confex. The first 2 Black female founders to do that as well. So there's definitely a lot of history made this year at Confex, and it's really great that platforms like that continue to support the kind of driving force of diversity along with us. And what was great, as we were talking earlier, was that people came over to have chats. It shows that there's a real appetite for conversations around people and culture in the industry, and is very much linked. Funny enough, I know you both will be speaking on a panel about the future of events, but this is very much linked to the future of the events industry. How do you attract and retain great talent? A lot of that is around having great values when it comes to diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, absolutely, Shanti. So I know you've got you've got a presentation that you're going to run through with us, but we'd just like to say, guys, to anybody watching, please, fire in any questions to the chat rooms, and me and Don will pitch them to Ashanti. So that's for anyone on YouTube, anyone on LinkedIn, anyone on Facebook, any comments as well, and we'll pass them over to Ashanti. We'd love to hear from you. This is a really inclusive show, so any comments of anything to do with this subject, and we'll do our best to get them to Ashanti and ask them for you. Okay, Ashanti, over to you. I think we've got some slides we're going to show for you. I think Callum will have them ready. Oh, very smooth.
So essentially, look, we're going to talk about how you can make your events more diverse and inclusive, okay? Think about the fact that the events industry itself is so diverse, okay, in terms of the sectors within our industry. And every kind of sector touches on a different business industry or vertical in the UK, for example. So you might well run events in pharmaceuticals, in motorsport, in healthcare, in international trade. All of those sectors you have an impact on, and that is why we can drive diversity through events. Okay, now there are some really practical things you can do, and generally speaking, there are 3 core areas that you can start in: culture, people, and indeed image, essentially, from an events point of view. Now, in this short presentation, it's going to be a whistle-stop tour. Do not worry. I can share these slides after, but also we have a completely free guide on the Diversity Ally website where we've scoped out some of those benchmarks and given examples of how you apply them. The main thing I always say when it comes to diversity and inclusion, it's about the spirit of diversity. It's about the values and the principles. I could potentially sit here and take you through what a whole load of terms mean, but as we all know, those are ever changing and evolving. Okay, what's more helpful is for you to understand the principles of diversity and inclusion so that you can apply them in whatever context you might find yourself in. Okay, so that's really important. Now, there are two elements here. There's diversity and inclusion when it comes to your culture and people within your organization, within your team, within your business. And then you have diversity and inclusion when it comes to the events as products and services themselves. But don't forget, and this is the example I use quite often, is unless your soil is healthy and nourished, there's no point in planting new seeds in them. So whilst I'll share some tips and tricks for making your events as a product or service more diverse and inclusive, you have to remember that the manifestation of that comes from having a healthy culture within your business. If people within the business feel included, as if they're accepted, that they belong, the diversity of thought is embraced and encouraged, you're more likely to get better ideas and you're more likely to end up with events that are more diverse and inclusive. I
absolutely love that. What a great idea about the soil. What a brilliant way of putting it. I think that's so true as well, isn't it? You need to start at home, with yourself first before you can even take that step. Otherwise, you're not doing it for the right reason.
Yeah, sure. I mean, here's the thing. There are multiple reasons at the moment, and different organizations will be, nudged along by different things. We'd love to think that morality, for example, and just doing the right thing is enough. The reality is, if that was enough, we wouldn't have half of the issues we have around sustainability, diversity and inclusion, poverty, you name it. So the truth is, you might be driven by the changing landscape of your customers and your clients and what they're asking for. Maybe you're being asked more often, do you have a diversity and inclusion policy? Can you demonstrate diversity and inclusion, or at least representation in the makeup of your team? Right? Some of those things might be the things that are nudging you along as a business now to start thinking about diversity. It might not be because you just think it's the right thing to do. And that, to be honest with you, is just what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So tell us about the global benchmarks. Okay.
Absolutely. So these global benchmarks, we have 5 in total. Today, I will touch on a few of them. Okay. But the global benchmarks cover 5 key areas we've identified are significant and relevant to the events industry. The first one is around recruitment and hiring, because many of you I know think about recruitment and hiring when we talk about diversity and how we can create more diversity in the events industry. Okay. But one thing I always say is that recruitment and hiring is one of those seeds. You need to get your internal culture right first before looking to embrace diversity and bring that into the business. But recruitment and hiring is absolutely one of the benchmarks to look at. The next one is developing talent. So look at your internal talent, your existing talent. The events industry has, just over 50% women. So in general, there's an even balance when it comes to gender. However, when it comes to women maybe going into more senior positions within certain parts of the industry, we see that there's a drop-off there. And quite often when we've worked with clients, what we find is they may not be developing that internal talent. So what happens is that they start to have to look elsewhere because they haven't invested in the female talent, in the young talent that they may have within the company already. So developing talent is a key benchmark that you can start looking at.
And not only that, it's financially better to kind of develop someone than to recruit someone, I guess, as well.
Exactly that. It saves you money essentially, and it helps you retain your best employees because they feel more loyal because you're investing in them, so they're more likely to stay and keep adding value to your company. The third benchmark is around company culture. And when we talk about culture, we're talking about that intangible, invisible air, that spirit that you have as a team around you. What is that culture like? How healthy, inviting, embracing is that culture? Does that culture promote everybody to be able to thrive, to progress, to give their best within their job role? That's what we're really talking about when we talk about company culture. Now, recently, I don't know, many of you may have seen on the news, for example, about the woman who was able to take her employer to court because she wasn't able to leave work an hour earlier to pick up her child from school. That speaks to company culture. And, you know, it's a silly mistake that the business has made, but you can tell that there is something wrong with the culture because it was able to get all the way to a tribunal. There are many stops along the way, and many people that query, that incident would have gone through, where they could have said, do you know what, maybe we can readjust this. Is there another way? Is there an alternative? But they didn't. And so it ended up going all the way through to tribunal and £185,000 being awarded to that particular female employee. So you can tell how important rather culture is, because it's very unlikely that there was a policy that wrote mothers cannot leave to pick up their children. It was a culture that was pervasive.
So could I ask Ashanti, are you finding that most companies are kind of embracing, you know, the culture these days? Has there been a sea change, you know, and if so, is it just happened or is it still yet to happen? What's your kind of experience?
Sure. So I think more generally across the UK, in terms of all industries, culture continues to be a hurdle and a challenge, because ultimately you're dealing with real human beings and everybody has different levels of understanding and investment in creating healthy company culture. Quite frankly, maybe the status quo works for you. And so to change that would mean you might have to make sacrifices so that you can make the culture maybe more embracing for other people. So more generally, it's, you know, very mixed. In terms of the events industry, we do see, because it's quite an entrepreneurial industry, certainly the smaller businesses are much better at creating culture that works for most people. The only caveat with that is that it's this kind of old chestnut of founder culture. So if you're two friends or a group of friends who start an agency, of course, your personalities are heavily embedded in your culture. Now, when you start to grow to, you know, 20 plus, 30 plus, 50 plus employees, there is a transition there, because you can't just rely on founder personality culture when you're growing at that scale.
Have you got any, Dom? Have you got any input on that? Because you've obviously founded your company and you're growing it now.
I think it's a real challenge, and I think we're not quite at the point where we're still small. There's 5 of us, right? So we're not quite at that stage, that level where that you're talking about, Ashanti. So I think if you look at my team, it's very much around the team that I've built, because they've been picked to do the job that they've done, and there has been an element of personality in that, and I don't think I'd actually considered that until you just said it, which is why I smiled. But I can absolutely see that's not sustainable as you get bigger. Probably actually beyond 10 people, it would be a more accurate number. And I could see actually that you need to quite urgently transition away from it being a founder personality culture. And I really need to actually think about that.
It's tough. You know, let's take specifically, you know, event technology and production companies and the growth that they would have seen over the last year and a half. There are going to be culture challenges now. No doubt about it. And of course, they're investing heavily in having a HR function, stuff like that, to kind of start working on culture. So you're not unique, you're not behind. It's just the reality of entrepreneurialism and businesses that start to grow and scale.
I think actually I'm just going to add one more thing, which is the challenge. The other challenge at the moment is people availability, which is an issue for the events industry as a whole. It's a particular issue for companies in my area, the kind of the production, the tech production side. it's just going to be about, as we start to scale even further, it's going to be about who is available, probably less than it is about the personality at that point. Because it's just, okay, can you do the job that we need you to do? Great, you're hired. And that will largely, I think, for lots of people, it'll be the interview process for the next year or so.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's just the reality of it. And what we've done at Diversity Ally with some of our clients is help them to think about these things ahead of time. So if you are going to be recruiting in short bursts, what kinds of things do you need to be aware of? And that might be just you as the hiring manager having a more diverse way of recruiting.
Yeah.
Right. So the reality is, when it comes to recruitment and hiring, particularly if you're starting from scratch when it comes to bringing diversity in, this can take 6 to 9 months to start seeing the fruits.
Yeah.
But what you can do is change the way you do things slightly, so that whilst the outcomes are coming through, at least your ethos and the way of doing, your recruitment has improved in terms of being diverse and inclusive.
Could I just ask you, Ashanti, does that mean in a more formal kind of way, as in setting out a kind of structure of rules, and not rules, that's the wrong, guidelines and things that you should be doing and thinking about and rolling that out to the people in the company? Is that what, I'm sure you're going to come on to that kind of thing, but is that what you mean?
Yeah, providing some guidelines, right? So this is not left to individual memory, intention, or enthusiasm. It becomes a guide, a value within the company of the way you choose to do things. Now, to be really specific, those things about thinking about, how debiasing your job descriptions, that's something you can do in advance. Even if it's a paragraph that you pop out onto LinkedIn, you can think about the structure of that. Is it heavily biased in terms of its language? Essentially, you see a lot of job descriptions, and on this note, it's great to maybe start talking about neurodiversity, Neil, because you see a lot of job descriptions that use words that are quite male in their field, or they may say things must be energetic. Now, if you have a chronic illness, you're not feeling energetic, factually speaking, every day. That doesn't mean that you're not competent enough to do the role. Okay, so it's about thinking about those kinds of things. Sometimes we see job descriptions that say looking for amazing whiz on Microsoft. It's just like, what does amazing whiz mean? Keeping your job descriptions very simple, to the point, not using unnecessary event industry jargon either, because then that really broadens the pool of people who will look at that, whether it's on LinkedIn or elsewhere, and think, oh, okay, that is a job that I could apply for. So it could be even just about job descriptions, essentially. What kind of job descriptions do we create and post?
Okay, fantastic. Really interesting stuff.
And then the next benchmark probably to be aware of is partners and suppliers. And I think that will probably be really useful for your audience. Diversifying your supply chain is one of the quick wins when it comes to diversity and inclusion. Okay, just quite simply looking at who your suppliers are. And the great thing is that diverse suppliers, and I believe I probably have a slide on this somewhere, diverse suppliers is actually quite a broad definition. And that can be really helpful. And I'll just skip through some of these slides to show your audience that. Okay, diverse suppliers can cover, for example, local vendors, social enterprises, companies that are wholly managed, owned, or who employ minority groups like women, mature persons, persons with disability, youth, anybody who's part of the LGBTQI plus community. It can include micro businesses. It's quite broad what counts as a diverse supplier. So one of the first things we encourage all our clients to do, and any organization, is have a look at your supply list. When was the last time you went through that list to check who you're actually working with and look at the ways you can diversify the supply chain?
Can I ask a really stupid question, Ashanti?
Sure.
But how would, say somebody wanted to take on some new suppliers, how do they go about asking those questions about what group, whether it's a women founded group or, mature? Is there a way of doing that, or is it just a matter of going to see them and finding out about them? It's not like a sign that they put on the door, is it? Really, to be honest.
Well, this is really interesting because at International Convex, we created a diversity trail. And one of the reasons we did that was to help the industry identify the more diverse suppliers on the floor. Now, we're going to continue to do that wherever we can at shows. So you asked a really good question, how to identify them. Now, it is a mixture. It could be just as simple as when you're talking to new suppliers or reviewing existing ones, asking them, what kind of diversity and inclusion initiatives or policies do you have? They will then respond by saying, well, actually, we do have X amount of women or this percentage of disabled employees, etc. And that's often just a good opening question to figure out where exactly they're at. If they're a social enterprise or a small business or a local vendor, that's usually easier to perceive or discern without asking them anyway.
Yeah, and so some people actually do actually shout about it as well, don't they? You know, they'll say women found a business or whatever it is.
And actually, Neil, that's a brilliant point again. Any business or organization in this industry, if you know that you're doing things along the lines of sustainability, diversity, and inclusion, talk about it. Put it on your website. Put it in your job description as a little paragraph at the bottom. Do you have maternity benefits, for example? Paternity benefits as well. Pop that stuff into your job description on your website, in your marketing collateral. Mention it in your pitches. Some of our agency clients have found that their clients are asking now, what are you doing about diversity and inclusion? So it's now coming up even in business development conversations. So if you are doing something, no matter how small, it's worth mentioning that in your external comms so that you can attract people or businesses that are actively looking towards working with others who are doing something in this area.
It's something we take really seriously in terms of our marketing and the things that we show on the screen, and we constantly use diverse figures in our imagery. People with disabilities and things like this. We've made a real conscious effort to not exclude anyone, to be inclusive as much as we can with those imagery. So everybody can make a start with doing things like that, can't they, in any of the social media things?
Absolutely. And that, marketing and imagery is just a key part of what we do in the events industry. Looking at your website, looking at your brochures, looking at your social media. What kind of people do you portray and present in that material? The reality is, we've experienced it just in small ways. Gabby and I, talking on platforms like this, people posting or reposting our content on social media, we attract a lot of people just quite simply because we are different, because we do look different to what maybe people are used to seeing on speaking panels. And it does make a difference. So don't hesitate to think about ways that you can be authentic, respectful, and get the tone right. But you can absolutely introduce more diversity into your social media imagery and some of your marketing collateral.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just going to jump in because there's a question come in from Veronica Brooms on Facebook. She said, good afternoon, Veronica. She said, excellent point about thinking ahead in respect to the recruitment process to enable more thinking of diversity. What about the inclusion aspect after candidates have been recruited? I'd love to hear Ashanti's view on the relevance of the induction process and program.
Yeah, absolutely. So this again goes back to your good soil, right? So you've planted a new seed. You need to make sure that the environment can nurture that seed. And so she's absolutely right. This is where we see a drop-off. This impacts company retention rates, is if the onboarding process and the initial induction lacks any kind of nod to inclusion. Are you making sure, for example, that, the orientation of that employee is thorough, comprehensive? Do they have a buddy or a mentor? These are the things that organizations do for most new recruits anyway, but they're not always consistent with them. But it matters even more when it comes to diversity and inclusion. So, for example, if you have now employed somebody with invisible or visible disabilities, have you thought about the onboarding and induction process? What do they need to know? Have you made them aware of the accessibility adjustments available? Is it clear who they speak to about those things? Is it clear what's going to happen within the first 3-6 months of their employment? For some individuals, particularly if they are neurodivergent, there are additional communication pieces that are very, very critical when you bring them into your team to make sure that they fully understand what's going on and they can execute and deliver in their role. So the induction and onboarding process is also critical in addition to that initial recruitment, interview process, etc.
So just, I know you mentioned the word neurodiversity there, and I know we've actually got a call. Hopefully this is going to work out technically. We've got a caller. We've got Monty Gutwell, who would like to talk to us about this very subject. Thank you, Monty. I hope you're there and you can hear us. No, I've just heard.
We just
I'll go back to him in a second. We'll let you know.
We're going to keep trying for Monty. I know he is trying to connect and doesn't seem to be able to at the moment. We're going to try and get him on so that he can ask. He's got quite a specific question, but I think it opens up a whole other area of conversation. So for the moment, Ashanti, please carry on, and we will try and come back to Monty in a moment.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So sourcing diverse talent.
Sorry, just on your last question there, about the onboarding and things. What about firms who perhaps haven't got somebody with disabilities working there, and them having to understand a person with disabilities coming to work with them? Is that an aspect of it as well?
Absolutely. So education and upskilling yourself is key. And actually, if you can do that before you find yourself in a situation where it's, time bound for you to be able to provide certain things, the better. So there's several resources out there. Diversity Ally have a brilliant podcast show. We have the free guide. You can Google these days. Right, there are charities and networks and platforms that help, for example, disabled persons find work and be embedded within a workplace with much higher rates of success. So sometimes it's just making a bit of an effort and Googling and going out there and finding these resources that can support you as a company if you're looking to embrace diversity. Now, there are several strands of diversity, as you know. They're not just as binary, for want of a better word, as race and gender. You're looking at things like age, neurodivergence, even body size, language, location. There are so many strands, and the fact of the matter is the human experience is so nuanced. Any one of us can become, for example, disabled, as it were, at any point in our lives, temporarily or permanently. So these things really are relevant to us all, and it may not be our present circumstance, but it's really important as a business to think about how we embrace those change in life circumstances as well.
Yeah, and absolutely, and I think the key thing as well is it's not just about you as a business, it's you as a person as well, isn't it? In your everyday life. These are all things that we can learn and improve ourselves on. Absolutely.
I'm going to jump in if you don't mind, because it's looking less likely that we're going to be able to get Monty in. So what he's done is, just in case, he has sent over a few notes, and I want to read this out. And I'm going to read it verbatim just because I think it's important. And then whether we cover all of this now or we cover bits of it as we go, it doesn't matter. So this is from Monty Gutwell. So he says, not much a question, more a point to highlight. In terms of neurodiversity awareness, it's all too easy to think only in terms of event organisers and staff, be they full-time or temporary. However, proper neurodiversity awareness needs to consider visitors as well. While things like sunflower lanyards and showing some understanding of the autism spectrum conditions is nice, the most important thing to remember is that neurodivergence is more than autism. It's a broad range of conditions and difficulties that affect visitors from the start of their journey at events, looking at websites, booking tickets, planning journeys, and so on. More importantly, more often than not, looking at those visitors, no one would know they were neurodivergent. So as a trainer with ADHD and autism, my expectation would be to see a whole knowledge approach by the industry towards neurodiversity awareness.
Amazing point.
I think, this is why Diversity Ally does what we do, because the reality is it is about caring, number one. And two, understanding how intrinsically linked this is to your paying customers and clients.
Yeah.
We've had many conversations with event organizers, and debates, quite frankly, around the merit of having British Sign Language interpreters at their events, about having more accessibility for those who may have sight impairments. And the same old thing comes up, which is, well, we don't know how many of our visitors and delegates have these needs. Now, there's a couple of things there. Number one, you've probably never surveyed your community or audience. And number two, to the point that was just made around neurodivergence and the broadness of it, is most people are not going to declare those conditions or difficulties, right? And so it does require from us as an industry to be proactive in this piece here. Because what we will find is that eventually the data will show, attendees will show that there are more people than we think who are benefiting from us being more accessible, becoming more accessible in our events, whether they're in person or virtual. Because, by the way, across both mediums, there are accessibility considerations.
I've been really surprised in the last 18, 20 months that we've been primarily producing virtual events. And I'm just going to pick one small element, but I've noticed it. I've been really surprised at how few people have asked us to provide live captioning on online events. Now, that's very easy to do on Zoom, and it's fairly easy to do on YouTube as well. It's more difficult on on all of the platforms that are out there who don't accommodate any form of live captioning as a side note, as an option to watch as part of a live event. I could literally count on one hand the number of events that we've produced using live captioning. But in every instance where we have used it, the feedback from the community watching at home, at workplaces, has been incredible. It's something that we first did on a live production about 2.5 years ago, I think it was. And I'm just amazed at the fact that, number one, not many people are considering that just as one element. And number two, that it's certainly not been a consideration in platform build in the virtual event community.
Absolutely. You raised some brilliant points. And I actually ran one of the first panels that talked about diversity and inclusion in the context of virtual event and event technology at Event Tech Live last year. And this is exactly what we were discussing. We had an individual who had hearing impairments on the panel talking about her experience of attending but also speaking at events where there was no provision whatsoever for her. We also talked to individuals who speak multiple languages and what that's like to go to an event that isn't necessarily in your mother tongue. It's very, very nuanced, but there is a real opportunity here for any kind of technology company to capitalize on that, because you don't have to be officially diagnosed with a condition or difficulty to benefit from these accessibility pieces.
I don't think you even have to have any condition at all. I think sometimes it's certainly, if you're talking about live captioning, it's a really nice add-on to an event, because it might be that you don't want to necessarily completely zone in on and listen to, but just watch. It's just a lovely add-on. The other thing that was really interesting, just to extend this point very briefly, I was also really interested. I physically saw the difference it made to an end user of live captionings at an event, that the difference between those done by the human captioner and where they then showed the AI generated captions. And the difference in the experience for that user for the human captions was so incredible that he actually got up on the stage at the end of the conference and talked about it for 5-6 minutes. It was fascinating.
And I think,
sorry, go on, Ashanti. No, go on.
Just lastly, to wrap that point up, this is why these conversations are so important, because, as I say, diversity and inclusion is often, limited to just thinking about gender and race. And it's not that. Really, it's about the human experience and the capacity to experience something, on your terms. And that's really what this is all about, whether it's experiencing the workplace on your terms or experiencing an event on your terms. That is what we're really talking about. And so anybody, can have multiple needs. And that's why it's really important that as an events industry, given the reach that we have, we seriously start becoming more proactive in these areas.
Absolutely. I was just going to follow up.
I've got another one as well. Go on.
Sorry, it was just about the captioning. you won't believe this, but Donna Aberley, hi Donna, was watching on YouTube, said, is there a captioning available on this feed? As I can't see, and it's not on the others either. So yeah, point taken, and we will try and do our best, because I think YouTube's just integrating live captioning, if I remember reading that rightly.
It's AI generated, and I think that there is an option on Facebook. We do need to look at it. Because the platforms are slowly building out. It is just worth remembering that anything that you see done, unless we've told you that it's human generated, it will be AI generated, and they're not 100% accurate for spelling. They're definitely not 100% accurate for grammar. And actually, if you're reliant on those captions, the poor spelling and the poor grammar makes it really, really hard to follow, because it's like you reading a whole story with no punctuation. It's very difficult.
It's very difficult to do live, and I think what we try and do is what we've done in the past as well, is clip up a few pieces from the conversation and then caption them as well, so at least people can get a flavour for it as well. But I take point taken, and I'm hoping that technology is going to improve. I'm sure it will as we go. I've just got one more point on that. When we were talking about the delegate journey. And the kind of approach to diversity and inclusion on that. Are you seeing more and more things on the kind of, the forms, like a delegate, when you fill in your form as a delegate when you're arriving, and more and more inclusive things being put on there, like, for instance, neurodiversity? Is anything like that ever? Have we got that advanced yet, is what I'm trying to say?
So it's still quite mixed, okay? Because, it's still quite mixed. Some companies have an initial registration form, which might be very simple. And then at some other point in the journey, they will go out to those who've registered and ask them about needs, okay? So we're seeing companies do it at different points in the journey. What I would say, probably one of the most glaringly obvious things that could be changed, and that I think companies should think about, is around gender identity. So at the moment, if you're asked what your gender is, usually only male or female is there, or prefer not to say. And we are at a point now in 2021 where we have to understand there are other gender expression and identities. So it would do us well at that point in the form, on the first form, to reflect that in the drop-down options that are available. Secondly, you're quite right around accessibility. There is no reason why maybe at stage one. I understand why some companies from a marketing perspective like to keep the form as simple as possible so that people register quickly. And so you need to think about, at what point in the journey then are we going to actually proactively ask our delegates what additional needs they may have, so we can make sure we're taking care of those.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's something that I want to improve. Yeah.
While we were talking just then, I was thinking, Neil, you and I have done, I think, 2 or 3 shows around the experience of online events over the last over the last 18 months. And I'm just trying to think back, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think in any one of those shows we or our guest has ever talked about the inclusion piece in the experience of online events. We've always just talked about the experience, like, can you network, can you connect with other people as an experience? We've never actually covered that part. So there's probably a whole other show that we could do on the inclusion of the experience of online events.
Absolutely. And
which we've just never done.
Yeah, and the thing is that it's going to always be relevant. If you just take, for example, internal employee events now, no matter what size or scale, the fact that businesses are stripping back business travel because it can't be justified cost-wise or in terms of sustainability, that means there's going to be a whole load more online events happening, which means more production companies, more event technology companies are going to be running these events. Inclusion is now crucial. Even things like providing transcripts, that's something we do at Diversity Ally with all of our training. We provide a transcript of the training, along with the workbook, the worksheet, the audios, the videos, etc. So it is a big area that, as I say, I've only seen featured on Event Tech Live last year. I think they may have done something this year, but it is worth keeping on the agenda if you're having conversations around, virtual and even hybrid events.
Yeah, I think it's a really good good subject on for us to cover in a future show at some point.
Yeah, I do as well. I mentioned at the beginning that we've done this inclusion, diversity and nuclear conference, which is quite niche. But again, I think for probably only the second or third time in the last 20 odd months, we filmed a conference last week. It was a hybrid event, and we are providing captions. We've recorded the whole lot. We're providing captions files for each of those talks and transcripts for each of those talks as a side note to go out with the content later on. And that's, for a 2-day event, I think it's probably cost them, I want to say about £1,000, probably less than that. But the benefit to that long term, not for them, but for the people that will engage with that content, is huge.
It is, and not to be, look, I've got my marketing hat on, but they can repurpose that content. The transcripts into various other formats and mediums. So it's a win-win for all concerned. And by the way,
keep that marketing hat on, because it's all searchable by SEO as well. So
there you go. These are the benefits that are sometimes indirect, direct.
Side benefit.
And we're more than happy at Diversity Ally, to work on any kind of cross content around giving guidance around accessibility and inclusion when it comes to virtual and hybrid events. We've done that before, so just let us know if you're looking for that kind of resource. We can add to whatever it is you produce.
So we've not got long left. Ashanti, can I ask you a really difficult question, I guess? What do you think is the biggest challenge facing the event industry with regards to our attitude towards diversity and inclusivity at the moment?
I think it's moving from being inspired by content like this to implementation.
Yeah.
There's just not enough people doing something about it. Yes, and so it may require more effort, more research, more planning, and in some cases more money. For example, Diversity Ally at Confex, we paid for a British Sign Language interpreter for all of the talks that we were hosting and running. And people asked us, is this going to be here all day? And we were like, no, she's just here for our sessions. We did something about that. We had to pay for it. So it's about moving from inspiration, being inspired by this type of content, and moving into implementation.
Fantastic. And on that as well, is there I know there's so many things that we can do that cost nothing, that are free, just in terms of our attitude and a bit of research and things like that. Is there anything from the government? Are there any kind of funding schemes that people can access into to embrace this more, like training courses and working with people like yourselves? Are you aware of anything at the moment?
Having a good Google helps, right? It depends on what you're looking for. Are you focusing, as I say, on any of those benchmarks, recruitment, company culture, leadership within your business? So think about where you're starting first. So have a look at those benchmarks, think about where it's worth you starting as a company, and then have a Google. Of course, Diversity Ally is here to guide you. So you can let us know if there are things that you need. What we're doing next year in 2022 is we're launching an events industry accreditation for diversity and inclusion. We know that there's a basic level of knowledge and upskilling that's needed in our industry, so we're going to launch an industry-wide accreditation. And any company that goes through that accreditation will have the basic necessities to be able to produce more diverse events as they move forward. So that's something really practical that we've decided to do to support the industry in this particular kind of endeavor.
Fantastic. So what we'll do after the show, Ashanti, we will get some of those links from you about some of the things you do, and we will post them up on the group, and to hopefully let some people see about, some more people see about it, find about it. This content stays on our YouTube channel forever. Is there any last things you would like us to cover before we go?
No, I think it's always really important just to keep it simple. And get started is the key thing. Is just to get started, to make something in your event more diverse and inclusive every time you run one.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that there are some elements of that have a cost to them, and that has to be borne in mind when creating your event budget. And you have to build these things in right at the start. I know that if someone comes to me and they want live captioning done on an online event, there's one company that we use over in the States, and I think it costs us about 1,500 quid a day. That's not a number that can just be thrown in last minute as an afterthought. You have to build that in. If it was £100-300 a day, it's a completely different thing. But when it's five times that number to get a captioner for the day, and by the way, if you run an event back to back all day, you have to have two captioners because they have to have a break because it's very, very hard work. So and I picked this as an example because it's one that I know quite a lot about anyway. You have to build these numbers in right at the start because there are elements of what Ashanti's talking about here that have a cost and you need to factor it in. But there are also those quick wins that cost absolutely nothing and you could do tomorrow.
I would also say, Dom, how can you afford not to? You know, you can't afford not to factor that cost in, can you? And I can see a fly going across your screen. I can see that fly going across your screen, Dom. Sorry, Ashanti. I can see him going. I could see him going. So, Ashanti, that's fantastic. I really, really appreciate your time today. I mean, some amazing points and, some great things to think about. We'll certainly be looking at some of the things you're doing and we will post up that and try and promote it for you as much as possible because the more we know about this, the better it is for everybody, yes.
Yeah.
I put a link in the comments already to your website, Ashanti, which is www.diversityally.co.uk. There's a ton of information on there that I've just looked at. There's also a link to some upcoming events that you've got, and I think also a link to the Diversity Awards next year.
Exactly. Yes, really exciting. Nominations opening. And this is a great way of us as an industry creating case studies and being able to fill out those benchmarks so we can see examples of what's happening across the industry. We do have categories for progressing companies, so don't think you already have to have done something. We're looking for those 0 onward stories. We have a category for event technology and production companies. So we really have thought about how we can make sure that everyone in the industry can get started.
Excellent.
Brilliant. So, Ashanti, thank you so much. You're a real inspiration to everybody in this industry. And I can see by the love that's coming in on some of the chat rooms and things. People love hearing this stuff from you, and the way you deliver it is just knockout. So thank you so much, Ashanti.
Thank you for having me.
We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ashanti. It's been great having you on. Thank you.
So, Dom, another great show. Super, super useful stuff there from Ashanti.
You know what? Lesson learned for both of us. I think you and I need to have a chat about this show and what we can do. Definitely. I think I need to go and have a think about myself in this business within Stream about what we do. Not necessarily immediately, but certainly as we start to scale, going into start another scale up again next year, I think I need to consider that a little bit more seriously than I have. But also for those out there watching at home, go look at diversityally.co.uk. There's a load of information. I was just having a flick through while Ashanti was talking then. And go and see also that awards. Go look at that awards and see what they're going to be awarding from across the industry, and see if anything that you're doing fits into one of those categories. I think it'd be very interesting to see what happens.
Totally agree on all points, Dom. Absolutely fantastic show. Loved it. One of my favourites, that one. Yeah. So, I know you've got a hard stop at just after 2:30.
I do indeed.
Thank you for everybody for watching. Before we go, we're just going to show what we've got coming up in the next few weeks. Something exciting happening on the 14th of October, Dom.
That's you and I. That's you and I talking, and I think actually I'm going to ask, I'll talk to you about this in a minute, but I think we need to revisit at least one of the questions that you've got, because I think Ashanti was absolutely right that we need to actually, this is the future shape of events. It's not just about the technology, it's not just about the production. The inclusion piece is essential, and I think we need a question on that for the panel. But that's you as the host to drop in.
Great idea. I'm going to drop that on you, Dom.
Okay, fine. No problem.
So yeah, guys, I put the link right at the beginning for this. We'd love to see you there. Come and see us. Me and Dom, you can actually come and chat to Dom, as I mentioned earlier. You can ask him about the show, what it's like working with flies in the studio.
Hate it when that happens. It's horrible.
Okay, and then next week we got our final show, which is a TBC because we had a couple of changes. So watch this space. Then we have got an onboarding webinar on the 21st of October, which is next Thursday with Diane. And then this is a massive one now, guys. This is CHS on the 26th of October in Birmingham. We need to show up at this event, guys. You know, if you haven't registered your place yet, please do. There's loads and loads of reasons, you know, new connections to be made. It's a brand new venue for CHS to be doing it out in Birmingham. Lots of suppliers coming out. There'll be lots of new people there. And then massively, a really cool thing that they do, they have a pre-event party, which is so the night before the show. So on Monday the 25th, it's going to be at the East Side Rooms. And I've heard some of the things that they're doing for us in terms of catering and what's going on. And it's going to be fantastic. And it's honestly, I've been to one of their pre-shows before, and it's such a good way to lead into a show the next day because you get to meet people. But you really need to show up at this one, guys. Get registering now. So that's anyone who would like to attend. I think there's even some supplier places left as well. We've got to stand there. We're going to be there with Dom. You're going to be there with us as well. We're going to be doing a little bit of a mini DW live walk around on the day. He doesn't know this yet, but I've just told him. And then I think I'm going to be on stage with Emma and a couple of other people at the end of the show as well as a kind of celebration. So hope you can join us, guys. That's going to be a really, really good show. And of course, we've got our Show Up campaign, Show Up for Everything, as we mentioned earlier. So that means the DW Live Show, CHS, the Future Shape of Events, everything, show and show, everything that's going on, the Sustainability Show, anything you've been invited to, online, offline, in person, whatever it is, you know, make sure you're there and let's make a difference to the industry.
Absolutely.
Phew. So, Dom, that's us for another week. Look at that, bang on 2:32.
Said no one ever. Yeah, no, we're done. We're done. To those of you watching at home, thank you very much for constantly coming and supporting us. For those of you that we see at the Events Air event on Thursday or at CHS the week after, 2 weeks time, we look forward to seeing you. But thank you for the moment for watching. It's been a pleasure as always, and we will see you next Tuesday at 1:30. Good afternoon.
See you.